Hello, welcome back to Fallout 76. I wasn't expecting to make a video specifically on this topic, but I've come across a lot of people both in my comment section, as well as Reddit and Discord, saying that they're going to craft legendaries now, and then scrap them once the Milepost Zero update comes along. Let me be upfront, this is a really bad idea. I wasn't going to make a video specifically on that topic. I was going to focus on making a video covering the entire legendary crafting system, analyzing it, and giving an overall set of recommendations. But I feel that this is important enough that it merits a separate video so that people aren't wasting the resources. So let me explain why I'm saying that by breaking down the process. Let's say you're really upset about the season system and you really hate the EA monetization guide they brought in. Kill the monster! And you want to craft yourself a super powerful pitchfork and give him the what for, right?
Pitchforks! You can't be an angry mob without pitchforks!
So you get yourself a pitchfork, then you go into the modify section of the weapon workstation and go to your pitchfork. The option to turn this into a legendary is available here, right? That costs you 4 modules for a 3-star, as well as some cores, but that will change later. But the point is that it will cost you quite a few modules, right? Say 4 right now. Later on in the PTS it will be much more expensive, but let's go with 4 right now. The other thing I'm seeing is that people are recommending that you craft Secret Service arm pieces, because they're a bit lighter, right? And you can craft them for 1 single module. If that's what you do, then your Secret Service piece will end up with a random 1, 2 or 3-star legendary. So it can be anything, right? All the legendaries are randomized and you can end up with anything between 1, 2 or 3 stars. The advantage is that only costs you 1 module. The same goes for Vault 94 armor, so that means solar and thorn pieces. And the same goes with power armor pieces like the Strangler Heart, right? You have to spend a module in order to craft it and it will be automatically legendary. How many stars you get and what properties you get is completely randomized. The idea was that you would craft each piece and then re-roll them to get the legendary properties that you wanted, right? But of course that's changing, and in the future you won't require any legendary modules to craft these armors. All armors will simply be crafted and then you have to make them legendary separately. Okay, I've loaded into the PTS, so let me show you a few of the things that will change. And hopefully that will explain why I'm recommending that you do not craft to scrap. So I have a legendary item that I'm not really interested in keeping. So let's scrap it. As you can see here, when you scrap it, you will get 4 legendary script. Which is not an amazing amount, but if we're being absolutely correct, we should take that into account, right? Okay, so that's 4. And indeed we got 4 script. Now, if you are looking for items to scrap, the traditional methods of doing events, or expeditions, which are more reliable sources of legendaries, those two will still be available. But, if you are looking to exchange resources, like say script, for legendary items to scrap, then there is a cheaper option than actually crafting one and making it legendary before the change happens. Let's go and speak to this guy. We know we're in the PTS because the cost of legendary modules has doubled. In the main game that's still 50 script, but after the change that will be 100 script per module. But, do you see what I see? Look further down the line. Here. Look at this. This is exactly the same cost as in the game currently. And if you look at this, getting a 3-star legendary gun only costs you 100 script. That is the equivalent of 1 module. So if what you're after is items that you can scrap in order to try and learn the plans for legendary properties, then this is by far the cheapest option. 100 script, in other words, 1 module, gives you a 3-star. Of course the weapon is random, which unfortunately will be a downside of the new system. It'll be much more expensive to pick your weapon and give that the 3 legendary properties you want. And that's why I recommended in my video talking about cores that you focus on getting the items that you want to 2 good stars at least, because getting to that point will be very expensive in the new system. But getting back to the point, if the reason why you might be crafting items now is to scrap them after the change happens in order to learn legendary properties, do not. Just go buy yourself a random legendary item from the vendor. It costs you a lot less. Even now, with the cost of legendary modules being 50 scrip, that's what? The cost of 2 modules to get a 3-star random legendary weapon. Remember, the actual weapon does not matter when it comes to scrapping. It could be a piddly little knife, or it could be a gas rifle, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the legendary properties that are on that item. Right? You have a chance to learn those. It doesn't matter what the weapon type is, so it is actually much cheaper compared to crafting to just buy these random items like you see here. And it will be that much cheaper after the change. So do not spend your scrip or your modules now in order to craft weapons with the intention of scrapping them later. But of course there is a downside to buying a random item. The downside being that you get random legendary properties. So one of the other options that people were talking about was to craft specific items and then scrap them in order to learn the properties. Like for example, the Unstoppable Monster. If you look at the properties that it has, that's basically ideal when it comes to something like a chainsaw or an auto axe. Basically, crafting something like the Unstoppable Monster gives you a really good chance of learning some really good properties. All of these ones are actually useful. If you look at the cost, you can see that it will cost you 2 legendary modules, right? So in the new system that'll be 200 scrip, but at the moment that's 100 scrip. So from a cost perspective, it is actually well worth focusing on stuff like the Unstoppable Monster. But let me just remind you that I'm in the PTS. In other words, you can literally still do this after the change. The only thing that will change from the requirements is that modules will cost you a little bit more. Literally twice more. But aside from that, it's literally the same system that we have at the moment. So if this is the approach that appeals to you, then the better idea would simply be to craft legendary modules and then store them. And then once the change happens, then start crafting Unstoppable Monsters. In other words, do not craft these unique items before the change happens. Turn the script into modules, store them, and then after the change happens, then craft these items. If you look at the weight of the weapon, you'll see that the monster is way heavier than 2 modules. It is much better to store 2 modules and then craft the monster after the change happens. Now, I was looking over the list of unique items that you can craft in the PTS, and some of them seem to be missing. So let's go back to the main game. So, back in the main game, if you scroll upwards, you'll see some items that were not there in the PTS, like this one. This one also looks really good. Aside from the Assassins as the first one, it's actually really good. Reduced weight and faster swing are both really good properties. The only so-so one is his Assassin's property. Something like the Face Breaker or the Mechanic's Best Friend, they're not bad at all. Basically, 40% more power attack damage and the plus strength benefits are not necessarily bad, especially because with the new change, the strength bonuses will become +3 instead of +1. So you will get a significant benefit from the plus strength legendary properties. Yeah, so looking at some of the other items available, none of the named uniques are as good as the Unstoppable Monster. So the nuclear launcher, for example, gives you reduced weight, but aside from that, it's not that great. So it looks like the Unstoppable Monster should be a priority, followed by the Headhunter Scythe. Those two will give you really good benefits, and as you can see, they both cost 2 modules each. So if I was to summarize my advice about crafting before the changeover happens, it would be this. Craft legendaries for the purpose of keeping them. Do not craft to scrap. So if you're still missing pieces from your Secret Service armor set, then by all means go ahead and craft them. You'll obviously end up with extra pieces that you may want to keep until the changeover happens in order to scrap them, but don't create armor pieces or weapons for the purpose of scrapping them. Keep the ones that you get as extras and then scrap them later on, but don't do it for the purpose of scrapping them, right? Like I said before, I am working on creating a video that will cover the entire legendary crafting system, the pros and cons and everything like that, but I felt that it was important enough that we touch on this point because I'm seeing a lot of people wasting the resources. If there's anybody out there telling people that they should craft now in order to scrap later, that is just bad advice, as I showed you. Craft only if you're going for items that you want to keep. Reroll items on special items like say chainsaws. Do not craft knives for the purpose of scrapping them later. Craft yourself Secret Service armor because you need it, not because you're looking for items to scrap. Like I showed you before, that vendor sells you randomized 3-star legendaries at a far cheaper cost than it will cost you to turn a knife into a 3-star legendary now. So either save your scrip in order to buy those random items from the vendor, or turn your scrip into modules that you can use once the cost goes up. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when new videos come out. See you soon.